green and white car.
He's the undisputed #1 QB in Saskatchewan.
Gonna take a shot. Evans got a step. Jack attack.
Best in the league.
Hey, this Saskatchewan Roughrider team is pretty good.
Look out. Pummeled. Picked up. And another scoop and score.
These Roughriders, I mean, one of the best defenses in the league.
The road to the Grey Cup in the West will go through Regina.
And now down to this. Need a touchdown. Fajardo end zone off the upright dead ball. And the Bombers have won the Western Final.
It's a pretty sick feeling in my stomach.
Those are the ones who are going to haunt this football team. That's tough to get over.
Stay with us. It's tough now, but the future looks bright.
This is CFL 2020 on TSN. Welcome, I'm Rod Smith, as we continue our look at all 9 teams in hopes of a season later this year. 7 years ago, the Saskatchewan Roughriders won the Grey Cup on their home field. They were dreaming of doing it again this year, until the pandemic put that in jeopardy. But if the CFL can play a partial season this fall, the Riders should still be considered a contender based on how close they got in 2019. And while they lost Micah Johnson and Derek Moncrief on defense, they brought in Otha Foster and Dion Lacey, who make the returns to the CFL. But Saskatchewan's lineup remains very similar to the club that nearly made it to the big one just 1 year ago. Sarah Orlesky has more.
No one would have predicted when 2019 started that Cody Fajardo would be thrust into the starting quarterback role for the Saskatchewan Roughriders early in the first quarter of the first game, or that he would help lead the team to a 13-5 record, their best since 1969, almost get them to the Grey Cup and serve as the West nominee for the league's Most Outstanding Player Award. Whenever the team does get back onto the field, all eyes will be on Fajardo and the offense to see whether or not last year's success was just the start of bigger things to come, and whether or not they're able to take that next step under the watchful eye of new offensive coordinator Jason Maas. The two have spent an extensive amount of time together since Maas was hired, not only going over every game that Fajardo played last season, but collaborating on this new offense, hoping that the Riders will not only be able to win the West, but get back to the Grey Cup for the first time since the organization last won it in 2013.
Once again, we say hello to our CFL panel via Zoom. Davis Sanchez, Milt Stegall, Henry Burris, and Matt Dunnigan. Let's think back to a year ago in week 1, guys, when Saskatchewan looked like they were in a lot of trouble at quarterback 3 plays in when Zach Collaros got hurt. On comes Cody Fajardo, Matty, and he does a great job last season. Back with more experience and a good cast of characters on offense surrounding him.
Who would have predicted 13-5? I think we were all blown away by that number and that market in the Western Conference. Cody Fajardo, or call him Fajardo, absolutely took the reins and rode like no tomorrow. It was beautiful to watch this kid come to his own in that tough market to play in, where expectations were super high. And you couple that with the change of guard at offensive coordinator position this year with Jason Maas coming in. I'm excited about these two working together because I think it's going to be a great match.
Yeah, and he's definitely the main piece to the puzzle, but they have some other pieces around him that are very good. You got to start with Henry's boy, William Powell in the backfield, and maybe if they would have given the ball more in that Western Final, we may have had a different outcome. Let's just leave that behind us. But the man I'm excited about is Shaq Evans, third-year receiver out of UCLA. He really showcased his skills last year. He was 4th in receiving, but he only had 72 receptions. The 3 guys in front of him had at least 100. He had 72 receptions, averaged 18.5 yards per catch. That's what I'm excited about, a big catch receiver. I can imagine him this upcoming year, if we get to play, possibly leading the CFL in reception yards. That's how good this guy is.
Guys, I'm excited to see Jason Maas, with this group, because I know last year, looking at Cody Fajardo, the way he distributed the ball, he liked to take the dink and dunk, hit things underneath, but he's going to still be in the same offense because Jason Maas runs the same offense as McAdoo ran last year, but of course, with a different twist, because McAdoo was always been an offensive lineman guy, where Jason Maas, being the quarterback, loves to spread things out, give you multiple formations, and can spread the ball around the different receivers.
Cody Fajardo seems to have resurrected his career with Steve McAdoo. And now we keep talking about the relationship between Jason Maas and Cody Fajardo. Guys, there's a lot of pressure on Jason Maas now to come in and continue what the success that Steve McAdoo and Fajardo had. Because previously, the quarterback, Cody Fajardo, was, they didn't have a lot of success. So for me, I want to see what happens with this relationship. I feel like something was wrong. I don't know why Steve McAdoo wasn't asked to come back, what he's accomplished with Cody Fajardo, getting him to do things that no other coach has got Cody Fajardo to do.
Certainly, there's more pressure, I would think, on Fajardo now. There wasn't a lot initially when he came on last year, but the Riders looking to take that next step, get into the Grey Cup game. They would have been entering Week 6 in 2020 had it not been for the pandemic. Let's take a look at the top plays of Week 6 in 2019. We'll be back.
Fajardo moved out of the pocket, and he's got Tyron Moore to the cone, touchdown! Gonna take a shot here, got Evans behind coverage, and brings it down!
Like his vertical.
Thigpen on the run, breaks loose, and he's gone! Open road for Marcus Thigpen!
You don't coach that. You just watch and admire.
Again at the 43 Arbuckle. And he's got Bingleton, who is hit a ton by Micah Alway and pops up the football.
I'm a little bit speechless. This one to me is perfect.
Now maybe a reverse. It is! It's Lewis to Adams. Touchdown! How about that? My, oh my, oh my. Little razzle-dazzle.
Do you want a crisp, refreshing lager like...
The Canadian Football Hall of Fame has announced its next class for induction, and what a class it is. Headlined by our friend and colleague Henry Burris, who led 3 different teams to the Grey Cup game, winning in Calgary and Ottawa, throwing for more than 63,000 yards. His old Stampeders head coach John Hufnagel will join him for his tremendous run of success in Calgary. 2 of the CFL's great offensive linemen, former Stampeder Freddie Childress and all-time Rider Clyde Brock, along with 2 of the greatest in Canadian university football, former Calgary Dinos QB Greg Vavra and the late Larry Utek, who built the St. Mary's Huskies into an Atlantic Conference power. Well, guys, he's known as Smilin' Hank. Check out the smile on Henry Burris now. Congratulations, my friend. So richly deserved. I remember when we worked the last couple of Hall of Fame games in Hamilton, I referred to you as future Hall of Famer. I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore. How does it feel?
I'm lost for words, guys. I just want to thank each and every one of you so much just for, helping make just this entire experience. I mean, well worth it. I mean, Honestly, for me, I'm one of those guys, Rod, gang, you know how I am. I'm nothing without my team, just as I'm nothing without you guys as far as on air. And to now be joining the likes of men who've taught me so much about how to play the game of football. I remember Steve Goldman said, Hank, when you get up there, I got 2 guys for you to meet, Damon Allen, Matt Dunnigan. Give those guys a call. I reached out to both of them. Matt, you've laid out so much for me as far as things I need to do. Damon did as well. Seeing guys like Milt Stegall play on the opposite sideline, hating him, but seeing how great of a guy he was. But you know what? And all in all, having a chance to join the fraternity of the likes of the guys that I've looked up to for so many years, I mean, for me, it's a dream come true.
Wow. I think for me, what stands out more than anything is the way you finish your career. You think about, you went into a brand new organization and you carried that organization on your back for 3 years. That first year, yeah, it was a little struggle, 2-16, but what you were able to do that final year in Ottawa was something special, culminating in that victory in the Grey Cup where you had the fake knee injury, so you wanted to come out and showcase yourself. But that was something special. And I know you wouldn't come out and say this, but that was the ultimate mic drop.
Hey, Milt, I love your thought process. Not where you start, it's where you finish. But I was there to start in 1999. In fact, Rodney Smith and I both were called in Montreal, Rodney. And we saw a young kid with George Cortez. You talk about a combination of offensive coordinator, quarterback, and being on the same page. He utilized Hank's strengths and showcased in that game. We looked at each other like, whoa, we got something special here. For the next 18 years, he showcased his skill set. And from 2006 to 2015, he was on fire and set the precedent. Hank, congratulations, man. It was fun watching you mature over the years and attack the game that we all love.
A tremendous talent to snatch the Grey Cup from me and others, Hank. What I look at with you is I look at the tiers of not TEARS, but the tiers of success that you go through as an athlete. And each step of the way, there was naysayers with you, and you continue to prove people wrong. Being a starter in the CFL, being an all-star, eventually getting a shot in the National Football League, and then finally the Hall of Fame. And this is the one tier, Hank, that no matter how many naysayers are out there, this is the pinnacle. Nobody can take this away, and nobody can ever doubt your greatness. You're a Hall of Famer, and again, respect, my man. And one other thing I have,
thank you guys.
Oh,
shove it.
I'm in the Hall of Fame.
Great moments in Calgary, and also, as Milt talked about, a great way to end it. To Ernest Jackson, your final pass for the touchdown in overtime to win a Grey Cup. That's the bookends. In between, some very good years, too, in Hamilton and Saskatchewan, as we head to Sarah Orlesky now with the current Riders starting quarterback, Cody Fajardo.
Well, Cody, before we get going with everything else, I have to know, what has it been like for you to go this long now without being on a football field?
It's been tough. I started playing football when I was 6 years old. Around in the summer has been new to me. Being home for the 4th of July was very new to me. Usually I'm up in Canada celebrating Canada Day as well as our 4th of July. So, man, I mean, I haven't been around when the weather's been this hot where I'm at in a long time. But it's interesting finding ways to stay busy, finding ways to not go insane. The positive out of this is I've been able to spend more time with family and friends and being around people that I usually wouldn't be around at this time. So that's a positive in this whole craziness.
Well, let's talk about when you guys do get back onto the field and you have a new offensive coordinator and Jason Maas right away. What is the communication being like, you guys, through all of this?
Tremendous, honestly. We haven't really skipped a beat. Early on, before we knew what the heck was going on, we were meeting twice, sometimes 3 times a week, and just getting the final nuts and bolts of everything figured out of what kind of offense we want to be. He has been tremendous in building this offense around my talents. And so one of the most frustrating things for me is I was so excited to get this offense going and off the ground and just show it to our fans, because I think they'll be very excited about what we're going to do. But having to hold back, and also another thing for me, going into my first season as the official number one. I've never had that since college. And so I was really looking forward to that. And now you have all this craziness. So we have this great offense that's just kind of on hold, this excitement from me of finally stepping foot and being the franchise guy. And that's on hold. So now I'm just kind of waiting in the wings and hoping for that green light.
As for the other side of the ball, as mentioned earlier, we have Micah Johnson, who signed with BC, and Derek Moncrief, who's gone to the NFL. But they brought back former All-Star Otha Foster to help fill that void. And this was a defense that was consistently among the league's best a year ago. More from the guys inside the booth, Glenn Suter and Dwayne Ford.
Well, Dwayne, we have to start by congratulating our teammate, Henry Burris. This is a no-brainer pick to the Hall of Fame. But we want to focus on a couple of defenders in Saskatchewan whose job it is to stop elite quarterbacks like Hank.
Yeah, that means pass rush and pass coverage. I'll start with the rush. And in Regina, that means Charleston Hughes. The numbers tell the story. Number one, he's productive. 130 career sacks, including 31 in 34 games as a rider. Number two, he's consistent. 10 or more sacks each of the last 5 seasons. No one else in the league has reached double figures more than twice in that time. And number three, he raises the level of those around him. Take a look at the top 6 defensive ends on the CFL sack board last year. After Hughes, the next 5 guys were all previously Charleston's bookends, and each of them set a career high in sacks when they played with him. Defensive end playing opposite Charleston Hughes has posted a career high in sacks. But it's not just about Hughes and the D-line. You need those coverage guys on the back end. And Suits, I know you want to talk about one in particular.
Yeah, it really works in combination, doesn't it? I want to talk about the best man-to-man cover guy in the Rider secondary. I think that's Nick Marshall. He's a versatile shutdown corner that basically loves that press coverage technique and challenging receivers. I'll give you a couple of examples of that. The first is a play against the Calgary Stampeders. He's inside about 4 or 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. Now, he's patient when the ball is snapped, holds his ground, and trails his man. That takes great confidence because you're essentially allowing the receiver to think that he's open and then aggressively closing on the ball when it's in the air. Marshall takes this one back to the house. Now to clip 2. He's back in that familiar short side corner spot playing against a Winnipeg wideout. But again, the confidence is evident. Basically, he runs the route for him and then is aggressive competing to win the play. The one thing you can be as a defensive back is in great position, but it's another to have that want-to factor when the ball arrives. Dwayne Marshall had 5 interceptions last year, and he knows how to read quarterbacks because he used to be one. Back in Auburn, he was a starting quarterback in his college days.
Well, you look, Suits, the coverage of Marshall, the pass rusher Hughes, that's a tandem that might even give Hall of Fame Henry Burris a hard time.
Up next, the all-time roster for the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Many choices were very hard. A couple were very easy. Back after this. Heading into the heart of July, the 2019 Blue Bombers were in fine form. At 4-0, it would get better. In what would be a record day, Matt Nichols set a franchise record with 19 straight completions.
They just announced that he set the completion record for a single game.
Fans should be happy with this and proud of him.
The quarterback he passed, Dieter Brock, in 1981. To cap things off, Winnipeg defeats Ottawa 31-1. And now we present the all-time roster of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, a list that also includes foundation players and at least 2 names that belong to the list both ways, based on merit and what they've meant to franchise history. The head coach of the all-time Roughriders team is Eagle Keys, the winningest coach in Rider history with 68 wins and a .724 winning percentage. Keys guided Saskatchewan to 4 Western titles and the first Grey Cup championship in franchise history in 1966. The quarterback of that Grey Cup winner is the man behind center of the Riders' all-time team. Ron Lancaster, a.k.a. the Little General, was a 4-time CFL All-Star, 2-time Most Outstanding Player, and holds several franchise records including most career passing yards and passing touchdowns. Gene Makowski was a mainstay on the Riders' offensive line for 17 seasons and a franchise record 284 games. A 5-time League All-Star and 2007 Grey Cup champion. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015. Joining Makowski are fellow Hall of Famers Roger Aldag, Ted Ernest, and Jack Abensham. Current player and 6-time Western All-Star Brendan Labatt rounds out an impressive O-line. One of the greatest players in CFL history, Hall of Famer George Reed is the undisputed leader of the Riders' backfield. The franchise leader in multiple categories, Reed also holds the CFL record with 134 rushing touchdowns. Second to Reed in career Rider rushing yards and touchdowns, Wes Cates narrowly beats out 2-year wonder Corey Sheets to earn his place on the all-time team. 8th in receiving yards in CFL history, slotback Ray Elgard is on the short list of the game's greatest Canadians, topping 1,000 yards in 8 of his 14 seasons. Elgard is the Riders' career leader in receiving yards and touchdowns. Filling out the receiving corps are team receptions king Don Narcisse, Hugh Campbell, who still holds the Rider record for receiving touchdowns in a season, and 4-time Western All-Star Weston Dressler. With Riders' records in field goal attempts and makes, singles and points, Dave Ridgway lived up to the nickname Robo-Kicker and then some. 6 times a CFL All-Star, Ridgway famously kicked the winner in the dying moments of the 1989 Grey Cup. Former Vanier Cup MVP Ken Clark was a 2-time League All-Star punter, and dynamic return man Corey Holmes was twice named the CFL's Most Outstanding Special Teams Player. The greatest pass rusher in team history heads up a daunting defensive line. In his incredible 12-year Rider career, Bobby Jurison racked up 142 quarterback sacks, 4 league and 6 West All-Star nods, 1 Grey Cup championship, and in 2006, induction into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame. He lines up next to fellow Hall of Famers Ed McQuarters, the most outstanding lineman in 1967, and Ron Atchison, a 6-time Western All-Star. John Chick completes this fearsome foursome. One of the best Canadian linebackers the CFL has ever seen. Wayne Shaw is also one of the biggest omissions from the Hall of Fame. 6 times a Western All-Star and 3 times the team's most outstanding Canadian. Eddie Lowe was similarly integral to the Riders' 89 title run. And Reggie Hunt's 2003 single-game record of 16 tackles stood until Simone Lawrence broke it in 2019. Like Shaw, Glenn Suter was a Canadian standout whose presence in the Hall of Fame is long overdue. Suter did not miss a game in his 11-year career. He was named to 3 CFL All-Star teams, and his 51 interceptions are not only a Rider record, they are the most ever by a Canadian with a single franchise. Lauren Richardson was a League All-Star for 4 years with Saskatchewan. Bruce Bennett ranks 3rd in Rider history with 35 interceptions. Eddie Davis is considered the greatest DB in franchise history. And current player Ed Gainey's 4 picks in a single game helped him beat out several worthy candidates. The Riders were long established before Kent Austin came along, but he put his stamp on the franchise with 3 of the 5 greatest passing seasons in team history, and his large role in bringing Rider Nation 2 of their 4 Grey Cups, one as quarterback and the other as head coach. Bill Baker was one of the toughest players to ever wear the green and white. And after 14 years playing both offensive and defensive tackle, Regina-born Bill Clark spent decades in municipal, provincial, and federal public service. Wow, I remember growing up as a CFL fan in the 70s, the identity of the Riders, especially 2 people, Ronnie Lancaster, George Reed. Think about this. At one time, they were the all-time passing and rushing leader on the same team at the same time. Milt, big rival for you in your career. Who stands out on that list?
Well, originally I was going to talk about Ken Austin, but I'll let Henry do that. I know that's one of his favorite people in the world. So wow. I'll leave that to Henry. You know, I'll talk about Eddie Davis. You're talking about a great player, 2015 Hall of Famer, and Eddie, we battled for 8 years. You know, I won some and I lost some, but I had so much respect for Eddie, and it was so difficult playing against Eddie because Eddie was a quiet guy, and I'm a guy who likes to talk, so I'm trying to talk to Eddie during games, and he's not saying anything, and if he is talking to you, he's asking you how your family doing, are you healthy, and all this stuff. So I hated playing against him, but I love playing against him because if I wanted to beat him, I know I had to be at my best. And also, shout out to our colleague, Glenn, of course, being on there, 51 interceptions for one team. That's pretty impressive also.
Yeah, I wanted to add to Rod's, when I look at that list, the one name that stands out to me as a guy that didn't play in the generation that I watched was Ronnie Lancaster, the little general. I have a story when I first got drafted into the CFL. My uncles found out, they were so excited I got drafted. And the first thing they said to me was, when are you going to play against Hamilton? We want to meet Ronnie Lancaster. So that, to me, is someone I didn't get a chance to watch.
I can say that Bobby Jurison, you talk about conversations that you had with Eddie Davis, Milt. Bobby Jurison sacked me so many times. I knew his entire family history, and when they were expecting a baby, when the wife was going to the hospital, because that's all he was talking to me about. He's picking me up off the turf and updating me on his family. And believe me, Bobby Jurison got a big old family, and he told me about it every time that he hit me. And then you go to the skilled receivers on the outside, and you've got the Canadian Air Force. You got Fairholm, Fantus, Getzlaff, Claremont. Those guys are what the Saskatchewan Roughriders are in the core. And to me, those are guys that certainly can be in that conversation.
To experience the rich tradition and the history of Saskatchewan, I mean, you have to tip your hat off to the guys, who paved the way for the rest of us. And I know for me, one guy that I definitely didn't see on the list, and I'm going to say that I got to say his name because I see a number of guys that were a product of him that were on the list, guys like Reggie Hunt, Eddie Davis, was Roy Shivers. I thought Roy brought so many great players over to that organization that helped lead to their success, which ended up being a Grey Cup in 2007.
Well, Milt talked about our colleague and friend Glenn Suter, and one thing I remember for all the years that Glenn had as a safety, the hits, the interceptions, I remember a special teams moment that went beyond him. He was the holder for what turned out to be the winning field goal in 1989 when the Rough Riders' drought was 23 years. Dave Ridgway with the kick, Suter settling him down, and there was just so much relief on the prairie when Saskatchewan won that historic game against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And that's our show for this week. Next week, we focus on the Ottawa Red Blacks, who made a lot of changes in the offseason after missing the playoffs for the first time since their inaugural year of 2014. New head coach in Paul Lapalisse, new quarterback in Nick Arbuckle, and renewed hope of becoming a contender again in the East Division. That's next on CFL 2020. Thanks for watching.
CFL 2020.